Okay, so in this video, I want to talk about how to defend on the map Bind. And this video, I've thought a lot about how to make because, quite frankly, this game is really complicated, especially the higher you go in skill levels and, however higher your hidden MMR is in the game. Teams are going to be implementing different kinds of strategies and different things are going to work at different levels. So it's really hard to distill that information and these strategies down to like something short and digestible. So instead of trying to tell you some exact methods, exact like placements of abilities and specific defenses, I just want to talk more about the general idea of how you should think through defending and what you should be paying attention to, both when you're playing with your friends or when you're just in some unrated matchmaking, you're solo, you don't know anyone, there aren't any comms on the team, and you're just trying to make do with what you can. So the first thing that matters when you queue into a solo game is the character you pick. Obviously, everyone has the characters they're partial to. You can try to fill out your team, make sure that you have certain abilities, make sure that you're not playing a redundant team. You want the characters to mesh well together. You can pick your character based on that. Some easy go-tos is to make sure you always have like a Brimstone or a Sage, or I'd even say a Cypher. Cypher is becoming incredibly useful and high tier in a lot of the games that I'm seeing, especially in pro play. Cypher has the ability to lock down sites all by himself and create a lot of coverage on the map with only one person. So definitely one you want to look at in pickup games. So after picking my character, the first thing I look at is if I'm someone that doesn't, if I'm not feeling like getting in the comms today and trying to get teammates to cooperate, if I'm not trying to tell people where I'm going, if they're not, if they just jump into the game and they start headed off to whatever site they want to lock down, I'll see where everyone's going. You can do this passively or you can do this aggressively. You can take a spot and see if they'll morph what they're trying to do to your placement on the map, or you can play around them. If you see 3 people go to A and 1 person go to B, it might be prudent to go to B. If vice versa happens at B, it might be prudent to go to A. It depends on your team comp. A lot of attacking teams want to stack on this map. So what they're going to be thinking most of the time when they're attacking, this does not really count for a pistol round. This is more, when you get to buying guns, but this can apply just as well to pistols. A lot of times during pistol rounds, teams will stack like 5 people in one small place and just hope for the shootout. But just generally, a lot of times if they're attacking A site, they're going to send a couple people down short, A short, and a couple people down Bath. It's kind of rare and honestly kind of unorganized unless they're going for a big ring play or some mix-ups that you're going to see people split between somewhere like A short and B short to head through window. Most of the time you're going to see a two-way stack where a lot of times you'll see like 2 people down A Bath and like 3 people down A short. If they're going to B, you'll see the same thing. You'll see like 2 down B long and then 2 or 3 down B short. They might leave a straggler out hanging just to peek down A short for the fake out. So as you get deeper into the game, you're going to be defending for 12 rounds. That's going to be a lot of time for the enemy team to adapt to what you're doing. So you want to be changing things up. You want to be looking around and you want to be adapting to what they're doing and what's working for them. So first we're going to talk about A site. One of the most common things I see in these matchmaking queues is a lot of these players, whether they have been able to full buy and get full utility or guns or anything of the sort, people like to take the peak battles. And my first bit of advice to anyone playing in a solo game, any inexperienced players, is do not go for the peak battles. You may win them at low MMRs when you're playing against worse players or beginning players. But as you go up, you will have to rely more and more on your aim and more on your positioning. And while you may be able to win some peak battles, it is better to not take them, especially if you are at a really common place. One of the most basic things that people do on this map is they'll walk right up here through U-Haul and they'll hold this angle right here, this angle or this angle. Now, if you're the attacking team, one of the first things that you're going to do if you're going down A short is you're going to check that exact angle. So they're going to have their crosshair already lined up on you. At that point, it becomes a game of reactions, and you don't want to leave it to reactions. You never want to leave a gunfight down to reaction. That is how you clutch things. That's not how you strategize. So if they're coming around here, honestly, at higher levels, I'm going to go ahead and pre-fire this because there's no reason not to. I'm just going to go boom, 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 boom if I'm attacking. You don't want to be the one sitting there waiting for your reaction. You don't want to be sitting here waiting for them to come around the corner and just hoping that you hit the headshot or hoping that you fire fast enough. So don't hold angles like that. That angle goes for this one. It can even go for this one. If you hang out over here, sometimes like an omen will teleport up here and hold these showers. When they're coming out of these showers, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to check down here. You don't want to be just sitting there watching the showers from there. You don't want to be just sitting watching from here. It's a little bit more unpredictable because there are 3 angles they can hit you. You can, if you're an attacker, you can be shot from heaven. You can be shot from around this box. You can be shot from this right side right here, and you have to check here. So this is not a great place to burst out when you don't have map control. So if they're bursting out of here, they want to have abilities down, like some smokes covering off some of these angles, because otherwise, there's just too many things to look at. You're going to be relying on reactions to get out. So while you can hold this angle right here, especially if you have 2 people sitting on A, it's not always smart because if they make it out this far, they're probably going to check it. You might catch one person, but you're probably going to get a trade. Now, if you're holding A, one of the things you want to think about is the gun that you're using. If this is an early round and you're using a pistol, well, sorry. if this is an eco round or you just are having to force buy and pick up an SMG, you need to play things differently. If you've got a Vandal in your hands, you need to play even more different. So if you've got a Vandal in your hands and you've seen your team set up, if you're Sage or your Raze, characters that have throw abilities that can slow down the game and block off some of these areas, like if you're a Brimstone, you might want to consider going up to Heaven. If you have a Vandal, if you're playing Brimstone, think about holding down Heaven. From Heaven, you can watch the peak on showers. It's somewhat of a predictable peak, so you want to be careful, but you can watch that, or you can hang out to this left side and watch how they come down A short. It's usually going to be pretty hard for them if they're breaking down A short. If you have any other map coverage, it's going to be hard for them to focus you down and whoever is probably sitting around over here or in U-Haul. So you can hold that angle. If you're playing a Sage or like a Raze, Sage and Raze are interchangeable here sometimes, and they do really well for covering A short. Both are also really good for covering bathrooms, so it's good to have them down on the ground here. A lot of times if I have a Vandal, one of the things I'm holding is going to be this angle right here, because if they come out of this angle on the right, I can get the quick shot off and possibly wall bang them through this box here, but you don't want to just sit there and take the spray down. If I see movement, I'll fire the shot and then I'll back away. If they're trying to move up, if they throw down smokes right here, a lot of times they'll have a Brimstone put down a smoke right here so they can take some positioning. They'll smoke off multiple places and they'll have sort of a concerted effort, similar to the one that I mentioned with Brimstone in one of my previous videos on how to attack on bind. A good reason that you want to be hanging out right around here is that you can move. Given that they are not like pushing incredibly aggressively, they're probably not going to be out of bathrooms yet. As soon as they break A short, fire a couple shots, hold that angle. If they come around here, they're going to have multiple places that they have to look to shoot you. They do not have an easy angle like you do. You have an easy angle here. This is a really hard angle for them to shoot, because if they're coming around this side right here, they're going to be looking over here and here. A lot of times they're going to be thinking about that common angle that people hold right here. It's going to be really hard to get the headshot. Also, think about this. When you're standing on those stairs, you are slightly lower than they expect. So if they're holding at head height, they're going to have to drop down. It gives you the advantage in the gunfight. So that's something to think about. And the thing you never want to do is you never want to sit there and hold it. Don't fire a couple shots at them and then sit there and wait for them to peek again. If you miss your first 2 shots, or even if you get a little damage but you don't finish them, go ahead and back away. If you see them pulling up, say you've got 2 of your teammates are sitting over at B site, but you realize that you've seen 2 or 3 people, or you've gotten a call out that someone's in the bathrooms, you want to go ahead and call your team to start rotating over to hold down A. If their entire team's coming to A, you want to call your team to hold over. If you're playing Sage, you've got your utility. This is where you want to hold down A short. Go ahead and throw a slow right back there. Keep them from breaking A short. If they're already moving up a little bit faster, put that slow right over here. It'll buy your team time, and the same thing goes for Raze. If you're playing Raze, you can do the same thing with your grenades. Throw those grenades over that edge, or right over there, because that's just going to buy time. It's going to keep them from breaking through. And that's the point of some of your early utility in this game, is you want to be able to hold on to utility for your retakes if they ever get the bomb planted or you have to rotate. But as soon as you see the attacking team making a move, or you have an idea on where you think they want to go ahead and don't be afraid to proactively use that utility. I mean, if you're playing Sage and you've got someone in here, you hear someone in here, but you don't want to take the peek battle because chances are they're looking right at this angle. You don't want to just go peek them. Yeah, maybe you might win that fight, but the safer thing to do is to just go ahead and slow that. Or better yet, just wall it off. Keep them from going there. They're going to have to reposition or fight through this. Now, some teams, if there's a couple people in here, they'll go ahead and break that wall. But most of the time, they're not going to go for that, especially in these solo games, because they don't always have the coordination and they're not always decisive. So you go ahead and put up that wall or put up a slow, and you're buying your team time so that the players that you have over at B, while they're pushing on A, the enemy's pushing on A, your defending team on B can start rotating around so you can take this fight with all 5 of your teammates. And that's really what you want to do, especially with abilities early on. You're using abilities through this A short choke and bathrooms to buy time for your team and create confusion. You want to get new angles. You don't want to be playing these peek battles where you're playing angles that the enemy is going to be peeking around very commonly and pre-firing. Because if I'm coming out of bathrooms, this is a decent angle, because when they're coming out of bathrooms, this is one of the first angles you see, but it's one of the harder angles to wallbang for them. So you can get a couple shots in. If you don't get the kill, just go ahead and back away and you're probably going to be safe for now. Whereas if you're over here, this is one of the first angles they're going to check when they come out of bathrooms. But like I said earlier, this angle, and the heaven angle are some good ones to mix it up on, because they have a lot of things to pay attention to, and often they can get kind of overwhelmed with the sight lines. Only thing about holding down over here is that you're going to be susceptible to shots over here. You can hold this down, and that'll also hold for if anyone actually breaks all the way out of bathrooms. But chances are a lot of times you're going to have a teammate that's holding somewhere around this area. So you want to let them hold, and you can kind of play mid. If you have a utility like a slow, if you're Viper or Sage or Raze, they're a really good mid player, because they can handle these sites really well. They can just go ahead and throw out their abilities. Sage can wall off this, you can wall off this. Sage can put walls up around these boxes to gain some high ground. You know, she can give herself a little bit of high ground up here if you want to peek them. Wouldn't always recommend it, but sometimes that's one of your options. There's a couple different ways that you can play this, but you want to leave characters like Brimstone or Cypher or you know, any of those characters that don't have throwable utilities that create space. You want to let them play the areas like Haven. Sorry, not Haven, Heaven. Or like if you have an Omen, you want them to be hanging out over here playing this angle, because they can still get the utility out of their smokes while playing a little bit further back, and their smokes are going to give them a lot of utility for the retake if you do lose the point and the bomb gets planted. So you want to keep them alive a little bit longer. You want to be on the front lines, creating walls and slowing the team so that your whole team can get around. So those are some of the ideas on A. It's kind of how you want to think through your defense. When you're coming out on A, you never want to, you can mix this up. Now, as the game gets deeper, you'll start to adapt to the enemy team. Some teams play really repetitively. Some teams play the exact same attack until they get stuffed. If you're not beating them on the attack, a lot of times they'll just keep trying it. So you can anticipate that, you can adapt, you can see what they like and see what they favor. A lot of teams play the same characters in the same positions. So chances are, especially early on, you're not going to want to just jump out and peek this. But on the other hand, early on in the match, you might want to just walk right out and look for a quick headshot. If there's no one here, if you're playing someone like Sage, it might be worth it to come grab this orb. Or it might be worth it to just go ahead, if you see that there's no one here, go ahead and wall that off. Or if you think they're coming but they haven't shot you, go ahead and wall that off and take that orb, because that's going to be really important in getting those orbs and getting, for a character like, for some characters, it's not that important. For a character like Sage, it's really important to give her the orbs as early on as possible, because she's often going to be playing a little bit more passively. And you're going to want her to get her ult off as soon as possible so she can get that revive on a teammate in some of the early rounds. You can get tons of revives on teammates if you're proactively getting the orbs and you're happening to get some extra kills on the way. But as a general rule, as a Sage player or anyone else hanging out around here, you don't want to be peeking into bathrooms like this. You might be able to catch some people off guard or win the gun battle, but against better players, you're not going to win this fight on the regular. And most of the time, if they're smart, they're going to have multiple people attacking in bathrooms. So you don't want to be getting caught up in a 1v2 here where both players, once again, if they're in sync and they're playing together, these are good players, they're going to swing together. And if you pick up a kill, you're lucky. chances are you're just going to go down to 2 of them. You don't want to risk your life like that. So don't hold this angle. Don't sit in here. Don't walk out right off the bat and hold this angle. It's not a good look. Every once in a while you can jump out, you can wall this off of your Sage, you can take this. If the enemy team is going to B, it's a good thing to just, if you're holding A but the enemy team is sighted at B, it can always be helpful to just come in here and take this orb. But otherwise, you shouldn't be taking much presence in bathroom. So how do guns affect the way that you play? If you're running a Vandal, this is a good all-around gun. You can peek down A short here. If you're playing a Vandal, you can go to Heaven. You can get good angles all across the board. Your Vandal, you can even hang out over here. It's a good all-around weapon, but if you're in a position where any of your teammates have been forced to buy SMGs, or you are the one that was forced to buy an SMG, some good things to think about is if you're holding this A short angle, instead of falling back here, which can still be smart, you can still pick up kills here, but if they have a Vandal and they have good aim, you're gonna lose that fight. If you're holding this angle, it might be better to hold right here. Yes, it leaves you out a little bit more, but if you're running this SMG, you can get that if you're looking for a quick trade. You're just trying to get some utility out of your character for your team. You can utilize the close range that the SMG offers to hold this. Not the safest place, but it's a thought. If you're forced to run an SMG, I would think about holding down over here in bathrooms, because you can sit at this angle and you can spray down anybody that comes in, and the firing rate at this close range is going to be able to demolish a lot of players that aren't going to necessarily be able to flick right onto you with their Vandals. Because if someone comes out of here with a Vandal, remember, like we said earlier, they're going to have to check this angle first. Then they're going to check this angle. They're going to check this angle. Now, if you have someone up in Heaven, they see someone at Heaven, they're going to have to fire at them right off the bat. If you're sitting right here, that's an easy wall bang. You can spray right into them. So it's something to pay attention to when you're using SMG. If you're using SMG, don't go sit in Heaven. You might be able to rotate to Heaven later, but don't sit in Heaven. So that's kind of the way that you want to look at your team is set up on A. Look at where people are. If you're going to A and you have 2 other people, I typically like to have 3 people on A and 2 on B, because I feel like B is an easier retake than A is. I feel like A is really hard to retake if you've lost a couple of people and they planted the bomb on A. So I like to stack more players on A than I do on B. And honestly, if I have a Cypher on my team, a lot of times I'm comfortable, if the Cypher is competent, by having him be the only person over at B and just setting up 4 over here. Having someone play passively around here, someone's holding up here near boxes and teleporter, possibly in U-Haul, someone sitting over here near showers, and then someone sitting in Heaven. And then Cypher can hold down B by himself, because a character like Cypher has all the utility in the world to lock down that site and get information. And if they're using their comms, I'll let them just set their stuff up, play passively, don't play for picks, don't hold hard corners over at B. Just ask them to play passively and gain information. If their cameras or their tripwires spot anybody, or he figures out that they're pushing on B, you can go ahead and rotate all the way around through spawn. You can rotate through the teleporter. You can rotate through the connectors. There are multiple ways that your whole team can collapse on them from multiple angles, and they still have to win their gunfights, but it's a lot easier to collapse on B than it is on this, because a lot of times if you're trying to retake from B, it's going to be hard to flank around them and get through this to go through showers. Showers is going to be a really hard angle to retake from, and if they saw you come through here, you don't have time to flank all the way around. Same thing goes for if you're going through spawn. It's really easy for them to catch you coming out of spawn or coming out of Heaven if they've already taken A. So depending on how the other team is acting, I like to hold down A a little bit stronger than I want to hold down on B. So to sum things up, think about what gun you're using. If you're using a Vandal or a long range weapon, you can do whatever you want on this A site. Especially if you're running a operator, you can hold Heaven. You can hold these angles really nicely. You can hold the bathroom's angle really nicely. If you're running an op, honestly, the one angle that I think it's okay, you can still get one tapped to hold, is this one right here, because you can catch people off guard. I wouldn't abuse it, do it multiple times with an op so they expect it, but if they're not expecting it, you can just hold this really tight angle, and if you see them peek, go for the shot and get right out of the way, chances are you're not going to die. So that is one of the situations in which I think it's okay to use that angle, but most of the time you don't want to be sitting there. There's just too many ways that you can get jammed up. So just think about the angles that you're holding, think about the guns that you're using, the range, and what's going to be effective for you, and then think about your character. If you're playing a character that can get more range from their utilities, like an Omen or a Brimstone, you can play farther off. You want to play a little bit further back. You want to survive further into the round, because you want to be the one that's using your utility later in the round to retake sites and create space for your team. Whereas early on in the round, characters like Raze, Cypher, not Raze, early on in the rounds, you want to use characters like Raze, Sage, Viper. You want to use them to create space for your team and buy time. Because if you see 4 or 5 people coming for A, you want to let your team know that. You tell them over the comm, and then go ahead and slow this, or throw whatever your utility is down there, and you just bought your team like 10 seconds. Chances are they're not going to just run along this ice. You just bought your team time. Same thing goes for the showers. Same thing goes for anywhere. And this advice goes across most maps and across even attacking and defending. You want to be utilizing your utility early on. You don't want to be taking gunfights that are just peak battles. Anything that you think is a peak battle or a really common angle that you see people at every time, go ahead and expect them to pre-fire it. Because a lot of people early on and as beginners, they peek, and then if they see someone, they shoot. As you get higher, people are just going to pre-fire this. I mean, if I'm coming around that angle over here, I'm just going to pre-fire that every time. I'm going to pre-fire this every time. You're going to learn to expect where less advanced players are going to be playing, and you're going to have that much more of an edge on them when you peek. So try not to take those battles. Try and force the enemy to be in situations that you want them to be in. I want them to have to stay right here until my team comes around, because if I can get someone coming around through U-Haul, I'm holding this angle, I'm going to force them to move out in a way that they don't want to. And the strategy in this game is trying to force the enemy to be in position. This goes for all games. It might sound simple, but you want to think about ways to force the enemy into positions that they're not going to want to be in. You want them to be forced to check more angles than the only one that you're holding. You never want to hold an angle where that angle is the only place that you could be. You want to hold an off angle. So that kind of sums up how I think about defending on A. I think those are some of the important principles. There's more nuance to it, but the thing is, when you have possible 12 rounds to... But the thing is, when you have a possible 12 rounds to do this... Ugh. But the thing is, when you have a possible 12 rounds to defend, there's going to be a lot of adaptation going. I don't want to come in and say these are the exact strategies, because especially when you're in a solo queue, you're playing with random people, they might not have mics. You're not going to have practice strats. It's going to be really hard to get people to sync up their abilities together. So I don't want to get into that side of things. I want you to be able to think about things at a higher level and be adaptive. You know, I want you to react and be adaptive and be proactive with the way that you use your abilities. If you're following a lot of these principles, you'll be set up for success in that you will be less predictable in your positioning. You're still going to have to win your gunfights, but you're going to be less predictable in your positioning, and you're not going to get overwhelmed as much, because a team that's really aggressive can, if you're not using your abilities correctly and you're holding really typical angles, a team that's aggressive is just going to walk all over you, because they're just going to run in. Even if you do get a pick, they're just going to overwhelm you with multiple enemies. So you want to make sure that you're taking fights that are favorable to your team. Make sure that you have plenty of teammates around you before you go running in gung-ho or firing off shots. So I think that about sums up most of my thoughts on A. Once again, this theory can go so deep. That's why these tactical shooters are so complicated, that I really can't just tell you exactly how to win on the map every time. I can only try to help you learn how to adapt, because if you have 12 rounds to do this, they can try running down A short 5 times, and then they can try stacking everyone in the showers, or they can try different splits. They can try different ways to push with different abilities. And sometimes they may get a pick early on. Sometimes they may not pick anyone until they're all on the site and you're splattering them all over the ground. So there's so many different variables. You're gonna have to adapt to that. You're gonna have to see what they like to do. Some teams are really repetitive. They keep trying things until they stop working. Some teams like to switch it up every game, and you can pretty much expect them every other game to switch the site that they're pushing on. It really just depends. Pay attention to things like the ultimates that are ready on the enemy team, and that if they have an ultimate ready, know that they might be coming in with like a Raze rocket, or that their jet might be running an eco round, so she might come out with her ults throwing knives at you. There's all different ways that they can approach things, and paying attention to those things is really helpful. Another thing that a lot of people forget to pay attention to is not only pay attention to the ultimates that are ready on the other team, but pay attention to their money. At earlier levels, people aren't always buying things like operators. But if you see a team has a lot of credits, think about the fact that they might have an operator that round. It's highly likely that a smart team is going to go for an operator as soon as they have it. So be paying attention to what kind of guns they're going to be coming out with. If you can look at their early on in the game, if you see that their economy is bad and you see that they're going to have to come out and run SMGs through the next round or two, play a little bit further back. If you've got Vandals and you've got a good economy, there's no reason to give them easy SMG fights if you're playing up here. You don't want to be playing up here when they're coming at you with SMGs. And you can know whether they're going to be coming at you with SMGs. Because, yeah, they might be at Sheriff and look for quick headshots, but a lot of the times people are going to be buying Spectres, and they're going to be coming around these corners trying to push aggressively. And if you're all the way over here, they're going to have trouble getting that spray down. They're going to have trouble picking up those kills. They might be able to pick up some, but it's going to be a lot harder for them if you play a little bit further back, play a little more relaxed. Same thing goes for if you have SMGs, like I said earlier. If you're forced into those situations, you're going to play accordingly as well. So pay attention to the money that the team has. You'll know when they're going to be buying Vandals. You'll know when they're going to be able to buy operators and how to play smartly around that. And then you're also going to know when it's a pistol round for them, or like they're going to be full saving, or they're going to do an eco round. They're going to buy just a little SMG. These are just things to think about besides your own mechanics in the game. Now, obviously, to still win these maps, you still have to have good mechanics. You still need to be able to shoot your gun straight and pick up your kills. But if you think about the game in this way and go beyond just the basic gunplay here and movement, I think it'll give you a lot better chance at success, especially in these unrated queue games right now where there's less teamwork going on, there's less synergy, and you're trying to fend for yourself out here. You're the only one on comms, you're trying to play with your team, but no one's really listening. These are some ways that you can kind of pay attention to what your team's doing and adapt around that. And also set your team up for success by using your abilities in these ways and holding these angles so that you can stay alive longer and pick up more kills. Because in this game, you can carry, especially in these unrated queues. You can get multiple kills per game, and that is the difference between winning and losing rounds. That is what gives you the economy to move forward and continue winning rounds. So, yeah. I don't think I got to B. This has been a really long video, so I apologize for that. But I'm going to work on B, and we'll do another video sometime in the next few days. So just let me know if you like this video or some of these thoughts here. Let me know your thoughts on the map. Just leave a comment, subscribe, like, share it to your friends, all that good stuff. I really appreciate the support. I hope you guys enjoy and find this video at least somewhat insightful and helps you at least think about the game in a more critical way, so that we can all just continue to improve and enjoy this game. So I'll see you guys in the next video.